It all started on what felt like any other Tuesday afternoon. I just popped over to the dry cleaners to pick up a wool coat for my daughter-in-law, Amber. Mr. Peterson, the owner, a man I've known for decades, suddenly pulled me into a quiet corner, his face pale with fear. In a trembling whisper, he pressed a small plastic bag into my hand and said, "Patricia, you listen to me. You take your 2 grandchildren and you get out of this town before sunrise." I was just frozen. I had no idea what was happening until I saw what was inside that bag. My name is Patricia. I'm a 72-year-old retired history teacher from Scarsdale, New York, and this is the story of how I had to step into a world of unimaginable darkness to save the most precious things in my life. If you're out there listening and this story speaks to you, drop me a line. I'd love to know where in the world this old grandmother's tale is reaching you. The smell of cinnamon and brown sugar filled my kitchen, a scent as familiar and warm as a hug. It was Tuesday afternoon, our weekly cookie baking day for me and my 2 precious grandchildren, Noah and Ava. Noah, my clever, mischievous 8-year-old, was carefully pressing a star-shaped cutter into the dough rolled out on the table. His little brow was furrowed in concentration, a look that was the spitting image of his father, my only son, William. Beside him, his little sister Ava, just 5, was happily poking her chubby fingers into the scraps of dough, babbling a little made-up song about glittery unicorns. "Grandma, look, a whole galaxy of stars," Noah announced proudly, holding up the piece of dough. I smiled, wiping a smudge of flour from the tip of his nose. "It's beautiful, my little astronomer. Just be careful that galaxy of yours doesn't fall to Earth." Looking at them, my old heart just swelled with a love so pure it ached. They are the light of my life, especially since my husband, Richard, passed away 3 years ago. My son, William, is a brilliant architect, but his work keeps him traveling constantly, leaving the bulk of the childcare to his wife, Amber, and to me. And Amber, well, Amber was the one dark cloud in my otherwise clear blue sky. As I was arranging the cookies on a baking sheet, Amber walked into the kitchen. She always had this ethereal, otherworldly beauty with her long blonde hair and dreamy blue eyes. But lately, her smiles didn't seem to quite reach them. She drifted over and placed a fleeting kiss on my cheek. Her perfume was a strange mix of sandalwood and something acrid, like burnt herbs. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice flat. "Are the kids behaving?" "They're angels, as always," I replied, trying to keep my tone cheerful. "Would you like a warm cookie? The first batch is about to come out."
Amber shook her head, her gaze distant, fixed on something outside the window. "I can't, Mom. I have to keep my energy field pure for the upcoming ceremony. Elias says sugar and processed foods clog the crown chakra." I bit back a sigh. Elias again. The Enlightened Heart Society again. It had all started about 6 months ago. Amber, a talented but always insecure interior designer, had been introduced to this group by a friend. At first, William and I just thought it was some harmless meditation or yoga class. William, during his brief phone calls from a construction site in Chicago, had brushed off my concerns. "Oh, Mom," he'd said, "it's the new thing. Amber's just looking for something to believe in. At least she's passionate about something instead of moping around the house. As long as she's not breaking the bank, it's fine." But it had become much more than a hobby. Their home, once decorated with modern art and family photos, was now filled with strange symbols, crystals of every color, and the constant lingering smell of incense. Amber no longer talked about her design projects or funny stories from the kids' school. All she ever talked about was Elias, the charismatic leader, and his teachings about releasing the ego, aligning with the cosmos, and cleansing karmic debt. She donated significant sums of money to the society, money I knew William worked his fingers to the bone to earn. "This ceremony, is it very important?" I asked, probing gently. Amber turned, and for a second, I saw a flash of fanaticism in her blue eyes. "Important? Mom, it's the most important event of my life. It's the great purification. It's when I can prove my purity and my devotion. It's when I can offer up what is most precious to be enlightened." She said the words "offer up" with a kind of reverence that sent a shiver down my spine. "What is most precious?" I repeated, trying to understand. "You mean—" "You wouldn't understand," Amber cut me off, that otherworldly smile back on her face, but this time it chilled me to the bone. Not everyone is ready for the truth. Not everyone is brave enough to trade what matters most for their own peace and tranquility. I have to go prepare. She left the kitchen, leaving me with the scent of baking cookies and a cold, creeping sense of dread in my chest. Looking at Noah and Ava, still lost in their world of flour and dough, I told myself I was just being a worrier, that I was just a skeptical old woman, that I couldn't shake Amber's eyes, the eyes of a true believer. And I knew, from a lifetime of teaching history, that there is nothing more dangerous than a blind believer.
Later that afternoon, after I dropped the grandkids back at their house, I stopped by Mr. Peterson's dry cleaning shop at the end of the street. It was a little place, been in Scarsdale longer than I have. Mr. Peterson, a wiry man with white hair and thick glasses, was a man of few words but a good heart. I was there to pick up that wool coat Amber had asked me to get cleaned. "Hello, Mr. Peterson," I said as the little bell on the door jingled. "I'm here for the order for Amber, my daughter-in-law." Mr. Peterson looked up from behind the counter, and I knew instantly that something was wrong. His face was ashen, his eyes behind those thick lenses wide with alarm. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he darted a glance out the window, then around the shop as if he were afraid of being overheard. "Mrs. Patricia," he said, his voice a hoarse whisper, "come in the back for a moment." He didn't wait for my reply, bustling from behind the counter, taking my arm and pulling me into the back area where giant, silent industrial washers stood and the air was thick with the smell of chemicals. My heart started to beat a little faster. What on earth was going on? "Mr. Peterson, what is it? You're scaring me," I said, trying to pull my arm away. He didn't let go. He led me to a corner hidden behind a rack of clothes and plastic wrap. He took a deep, shaky breath, and his bony hands trembled as he reached into his apron pocket and pulled out a clear plastic sandwich bag. He held it out to me. I found this in the pocket of your daughter-in-law's coat," he stammered. I squinted to see. Inside the bag were two things. The first was a piece of paper, a bank transfer receipt. The number on it made me catch my breath. $5 million. An impossible sum transferred to an account named the Enlightened Heart Society. But it wasn't the number that made me feel like I'd been punched in the gut. It was the second item. It was a small Polaroid photo of Noah and Ava. They were smiling, their innocent grins from a picnic in the park. But someone had taken a dark red marker, the color of dried blood, and drawn two sloppy, angry circles around the children's faces. In the center of each circle was a strange symbol I'd never seen before, like a stylized eye with a lightning bolt through it. The blood in my veins felt like it had turned to ice. I felt dizzy, and I had to grab onto a cold washing machine to keep from falling. What? What is this?" I breathed, my voice cracking. "I don't know, ma'am," Mr. Peterson said, his voice trembling just as much as mine. "But I've lived long enough to know this isn't some joke. When I saw it, I felt ice in my chest, a terrible feeling. You listen to me, Patricia." He moved closer, his eyes boring into mine, urgent and full of fear. "I think you should take those children and leave right now. Don't tell anyone, don't call anyone, just go. Get out of this town before the sun comes up. Don't ask why, just do it. I know it's not my place, but my gut tells me these marks they're not good." His words were like a bucket of cold water to the face, snapping me out of my initial shock. A part of my mind was still clinging to logic. This was Scarsdale, a peaceful town. This was Amber, my daughter-in-law, a little strange lately, but a mother. And Mr. Peterson, though kind, was an old man, perhaps with an overactive imagination. I tried to take a deep breath to gather my scattered thoughts. Mr. Peterson, I thank you for your concern, I said, my voice still shaky but trying to sound calm. Maybe it's just a mean prank by some kids. Or Amber, she's in some strange art group. I'll keep what you said in mind. I tried to manage a weak smile, one I knew looked pathetic. I was about to turn and leave, to pretend this never happened, to go home and try to forget that horrifying image. But Mr. Peterson didn't let me go. He didn't touch me, but his eyes held me there. He looked at me with a deep sort of understanding, as if he could see the doubt and the fear warring inside of me. "Patricia," he said, his voice softer now, the urgency replaced by the wisdom of a long life. "You don't have to believe me completely, but take a piece of advice from an old man. Why don't you take this as an opportunity to take the kids on a little trip, just the three of you? A surprise camping trip up in the Catskills maybe, or a late season visit to the beach out in the Hamptons. Just call it a little adventure." He gave a slight wink. "If I'm wrong, and it really is just some silly nonsense, well, then you and your grandkids have made a beautiful memory, a funny story to tell. No harm done. But if my gut feeling is right..." He didn't finish the sentence, but his silence was more terrifying than any words could be. His suggestion, so gentle and without pressure, was a stroke of genius. He gave me an out, a perfectly reasonable excuse to act, without having to admit to myself that I was running from some invisible monster. A little trip. Yes, that's all it was. If everything was fine, I'd bring them back tomorrow and laugh at my own worrying. A little trip, I mumbled to myself, the words feeling like a life raft. I looked up at him, and this time the gratitude in my eyes was real. "Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Thank you so much. That's a good idea." I took Amber's coat, paid for it automatically. I walked out of the dry cleaners without another word of thanks or goodbye. The crisp afternoon air hit my face, but I didn't feel it. The world was still going on, cars driving by, children laughing on the playground across the street. But for me, everything had stopped. In my mind, one phrase repeated over and over like a death knell. You have to leave. The walk home from the shop had never felt so long. Every step was heavy. I passed familiar houses, manicured lawns, but they were all a blur. All I could see were the smiling faces of Noah and Ava, defaced by those hideous red circles. I was a history teacher. I'd read about evil rituals, about the madness of fanaticism, but I never, ever thought it could touch my own family, my own grandchildren, who I loved more than life itself. When I got back to my empty house, the silence was suffocating. I sank into my armchair in the living room, the plastic bag still clutched in my hand. What should I do? Call William? He was 1,000 miles away, and he'd just tell me I was overreacting again. Call the police? What would I tell them? That my daughter-in-law joined a meditation group and I found a defaced photo in her coat pocket? They'd laugh at me. No, Mr. Peterson was right. I couldn't trust anyone right now. I could only trust my gut, the instinct of a grandmother who senses a wolf circling her lambs. I stood up, my hesitation gone, replaced by a cold resolve. I didn't have much time. I went upstairs to the kids' room. Their sweet little kid smell still hung in the air. I opened their closet, my hands shaking as I pulled out a few changes of clothes. The Superman pajamas Noah loved, the worn-out stuffed rabbit named Barnaby that Ava never went anywhere without, a few pairs of socks, sweaters, jeans. I had no idea where I was going or for how long, so I just grabbed the essentials. I threw it all into an old duffel bag. Then I went to my own room, took all the cash I had hidden in a drawer, my credit cards, and a few small pieces of jewelry I could sell if I had to. Every move was silent, almost robotic. I was afraid that if I stopped to think, the fear would paralyze me. I tossed the small packed bag into the trunk of my car, then went back inside, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked at the clock. It was almost 7 in the evening. I had to act now. I walked into the living room where Noah and Ava were watching a cartoon. I shut off the TV. "All right, you two explorers," I said, forcing my voice to sound light and fun. "Pack up your toys. How would you two like to go on a surprise adventure with Grandma?" "An adventure?" Noah's voice piped up, his eyes lighting up with excitement. "Where are we going, Grandma? Are we going camping?"
"Even better than camping," I said, a bitter lie forming on my tongue. "It's a secret, a super special nighttime trip. Hurry, get your coats. We have to leave right now." The kids cheered, scrambling to get their coats and shoes. I stood at the door, my hand on the doorknob, my heart pounding in my chest. If I could just get out this door, we'd be safe. I was just about to open it, with Noah and Ava ready at my side, when suddenly I heard a key turn in the lock from the outside. The door swung open. Amber stood there, her key still in the lock. She was dressed in white yoga clothes, her hair in a tight bun, probably just back from one of her meditation sessions. She blinked in surprise to see the three of us huddled by the door, bundled in our coats, with Barnaby the rabbit and Noah's dinosaur backpack in hand. "Mom? Kids?" she asked, her voice laced with confusion. "Where are you all going at this hour?" My heart plummeted into my stomach. My plan to slip away quietly was ruined. I had to think of a reason so convincing she wouldn't question it. My mind raced. "Oh, hello, dear, Amber," I said quickly, forcing a natural smile. We were just about to give you a surprise." "A surprise?" she said, her brow furrowing as her sharp eyes darted from me to the children. "Yes," I said, my voice a little too enthusiastic. "I just got a call from my cousin Susan out in rural Pennsylvania. You remember her? She said their farm just had a new litter of lambs. Just adorable. I thought it would be wonderful to take Noah and Ava out there for a few days. A little trip to the country, get some fresh air." I pulled the kids closer. The kids were so excited, weren't you, darlings? Noah and Ava, having no idea what was happening, but hearing their grandma talk about a trip, immediately played along. "Yeah, baby sheep. I want to see the baby sheep," Ava chirped. Amber was still looking at us with suspicion. "Pennsylvania? Why so sudden, Mom? Why didn't you talk to me about it first?" "Well, like I said, it's a surprise," I repeated, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I wanted you to have a few quiet days to yourself to prepare for your big ceremony. You know, to focus and cleanse your energy without the kids underfoot. I was just trying to help." My lie hit its mark. I saw the suspicion in her eyes begin to fade, replaced by a flicker of calculation. She was quiet for a moment. It seemed she was weighing having the children under her control against having more free time to devote to her cult. Perhaps, in her mind, my taking the children far away would only make her offering plan easier, less noticeable. Finally, she nodded, a slow, deliberate nod. "All right, that's a good idea. I could use the quiet space." She bent down and gave each child a detached kiss on the cheek. "You two have fun, and be good for Grandma." "We will," they chorused. "Just make sure they get to bed on time and call me every day," she said to me, but it sounded more like an order than a request. "Of course, dear," I replied, a wave of immense relief washing over me. I quickly ushered the children out the door, not daring to stay another second in case she changed her mind. Noah and Ava ran out ahead of me, hugging my legs. "We're going on an adventure," Ava squealed. I pulled the children into a tight hug, burying my face in their hair, trying to hide the fact that I was trembling from head to toe. "That's right, my sweethearts," I whispered. "A grand adventure." As we pulled away from the curb, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Amber was still standing in the doorway, a small figure in her white clothes. But in the dim glow of the streetlight, I didn't see a mother watching her children leave for a trip. I saw a jailer, temporarily letting her prisoners out of their cell, certain they'd be back soon to face their sentence. I pressed my foot down on the gas, and the car shot into the night, running from the monster to whom I had just lied so smoothly.
I kept driving, not toward my own house, but heading for the interstate. Scarsdale, the town where I had spent nearly my entire life, receded into the darkness behind me. I had no idea where I was going. I just knew I had to go, had to get these two little angels somewhere safe, as far away from that demonic wed circle as I possibly could. My hands gripped the steering wheel, my eyes fixed on the dark road ahead. My escape had begun. That night drive to Albany was the longest, most silent journey of my life. I drove in a haze, my mind a tangled mess of fear and rage. The children were fast asleep in the back seat, their steady breathing the only sound anchoring me to reality. Noah would occasionally murmur in his sleep about spaceships, while Ava snuggled deeper against her brother, her hands still clutching Barnaby the rabbit. Looking at them in the rearview mirror, my innocent angels sleeping soundly, completely unaware that they had just escaped the claws of a wolf disguised as their own mother. A wave of fury washed over me, hot and bitter. How could Amber, how could a mother draw those devilish circles on the faces of her own children? I still held out a sliver of hope that this was all just some sick joke, but my gut told me otherwise.
Dawn was breaking as we reached the outskirts of Albany, painting the clouds in shades of pink. I was exhausted, physically and mentally. There was only one place I could think to go, one single safe harbor in this storm, Sarah's house. Sarah and I had been best friends since college. While I chose the quiet path of a history teacher, Sarah dove headfirst into the turbulent world of investigative journalism. She was a true bulldog, a real news hound who never backed down from a scandal or a threat. Though she'd been retired for a few years, her sharp mind and reporter's instincts had never dulled. Sarah's home, a lovely little house on a tree-lined street, was just like her, unassuming on the outside, but holding a treasure trove of knowledge and secrets within. I parked in front of her house and killed the engine. The sudden silence was jarring. I turned to look at the two sleeping children. I didn't want to wake them, didn't want to drag them into this terrifying adult world. I sat there for a moment, staring at Sarah's house, taking a deep breath to steady my nerves. Then I got out of the car, walked up the stone steps, and rang the bell. A few seconds later, the door opened. Sarah stood there with her same stylishly short salt-and-pepper hair and sharp eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses. She was wearing a baggy sweater and jeans, a steaming mug of coffee in her hand. When she saw the state I was in, my hair a mess, my eyes dark with sleeplessness and panic, her welcoming smile vanished. "Patricia, good Lord, what happened?" she exclaimed, her voice full of concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Where are the children?" "They're in the car, still asleep," I answered, my voice hoarse. "Sarah, I need your help." Without another question, she took my arm and pulled me inside. Bring them in the living room, let them sleep on the sofa." Together, we gently carried Noah and Ava inside. Sarah covered them with a soft wool blanket. Once she was sure the children were settled, she led me into the kitchen, poured me a glass of water, and pushed it into my hand. "Drink," she ordered, in a tone that allowed no argument. "Now, what is going on? What happened?" And so I told her. I took the plastic bag from my coat pocket and laid it on her kitchen table. I told her about the afternoon at the dry cleaners, about Mr. Peterson's warning, about the $5 million transfer receipt, and finally about the Polaroid. As I pushed the photo toward her, Sarah put on her reading glasses and picked it up, examining it carefully under the light. I saw her jaw tighten, her sharp eyes narrowing in intense focus. She said nothing for a few long minutes, just silently studying the photo, then the receipt. Her silence was more frightening than any words could have been. It told me that my fears were not just my imagination. Finally, she put the photo down and looked up at me. "Patricia," she said, her voice low and hard, the one she used when she was about to break a major story. "You did absolutely the right thing by bringing them here. Absolutely the right thing." "Do you know this name?" I asked, pointing to the words Enlightened Heart Society on the receipt.
Sarah nodded slowly. She stood up and walked to her office, a wonderfully cluttered room overflowing with stacks of books, newspapers, and old file boxes. Know them? I spent the better part of a year investigating them before I retired. My editor thought the story was too hot to handle, not enough hard evidence to go to print. The old coward was afraid of getting sued. She rummaged through a metal filing cabinet and pulled out a thick, dust-covered folder. She brought it to the kitchen table, blew the dust off, and opened it. Inside was a collection of newspaper clippings, interview transcripts, and long lens photographs. Here, she said, pointing to a photo of a middle-aged man with slicked-back graying hair, a brilliant smile, and strangely charismatic eyes. This is Elias. The leader, I whispered. Leader, prophet, con artist, Sarah said, her voice dripping with contempt. He is a master of psychological manipulation. He targets people exactly like Amber, wealthy, educated, but spiritually empty, looking for a purpose. He gives them a community, a belief system, a sense of belonging. And once he has their trust, he takes everything. She flipped through the pages, showing me evidence of financial scams, broken families, people who had sold their homes to donate to the society. But then she stopped on a page marked with a red tab. But money isn't the only thing he's after, Patricia. That's just the surface. What he's really dealing in is much, much darker. She took a breath and looked me straight in the eye. Did Amber mention a great purification ceremony? I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. She said it was a time to offer up what is most precious. Exactly, Sarah said, her voice turning cold. The Great Purification is the pinnacle of Elias's system. It's an extremely private event, only for the most loyal and wealthy members. To prove their absolute devotion, they must offer up their children to the society. I felt sick. Offer up? What do you mean?
Not kill them, if that's what you're thinking. Elias is more sophisticated than that, Sarah explained. Within the cult, there are other couples, also very wealthy, but who are unable to have children. Elias arranges a sacred adoption. The offered children are given to these new families. It's human trafficking dressed up as a religious ceremony. No paperwork, no legal trail. The child simply vanishes from the outside world and is raised in an environment completely controlled by the cult. For the seller and the buyer, it's a divine arrangement. For Elias, it's a multi-million-dollar transaction for each child. My head was spinning. I gripped the edge of the table. So, Amber wasn't just being scammed out of money. She had agreed to sell her own children. And the red circle? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Sarah pointed to a transcript. It's their symbol. When a child is selected for the purification, they are consecrated. That red circle, Patricia, it isn't a doodle, it's a brand. It means the sacrifice has been chosen. The sacrifice. The word bored into my mind like a drill. Noah and Ava were no longer my grandchildren, no longer children. In the eyes of these people, they were merely sacrifices. I bent over, a wave of nausea rising in my throat. Sarah quickly came over and rubbed my back. Easy, Patricia. Take a deep breath. The kids are here. They're safe, she said. But I couldn't be calm. A terrible rage, a rage I had never felt in my 72 years, erupted inside me. It burned away the fear, the confusion, leaving only a white-hot hatred. Hatred for Elias, hatred for his evil cult, and most painfully of all, hatred for Amber, the daughter-in-law I had once loved. I looked up, wiping away hot tears. We have to do something, Sarah. We can't just hide here. He won't stop. He'll look for them. Sarah nodded, her expression grim. I agree, but we can't take him on ourselves. He has money, lawyers, and a legion of followers who would do anything for him. We need a bigger gun. She looked at me, her eyes determined. We need to go to the police. The decision to go to the police station wasn't an easy one. The fear that they wouldn't believe us, that they'd see me as just a hysterical old woman, was still there. But Sarah reassured me. "I know a guy," she said. "Miller, James Miller. He was a cub reporter back when I was at the paper. Then he joined the force. He's a detective with the State Special Task Force now. Smart guy, and he listens." Sarah made a call. 15 minutes later, we had an appointment. We left the children with one of Sarah's trusted neighbors, telling a white lie about needing to sort out some urgent paperwork. The New York State Special Investigations Unit was in a nondescript government building. The air inside was cold and formal. We were shown into a small windowless conference room. A few minutes later, a tall man in his 40s walked in. He had a strong jaw and tired but sharp eyes. "Sarah," he said, the hint of a smile on his lips. "Long time no see. Last I saw you, you were shouting at a state senator on the steps of City Hall." "As I recall, you were fumbling with your tape recorder," Sarah shot back, not missing a beat. "James, this is my friend Patricia. She's in very serious trouble, and I think it connects to an old case of mine." Detective Miller invited us to sit. His demeanor was professional, but skeptical. I could see him thinking this might just be a domestic dispute. I took a breath and began my story again, my voice still trembling. I showed him the photo and the receipt. He examined them carefully. When he saw the number on the receipt, his eyebrows shot up. But when he saw the photo, the skepticism on his face slowly dissolved, replaced by intense focus. "This symbol," he muttered, pointing to the eye with the lightning bolt. "I've seen this somewhere before." That's when Sarah put her folder on the table. "You've seen it in the reports of missing persons connected to Elias's Enlightened Heart Society cult, James. The cases your local precincts had to close for lack of evidence." Miller began flipping through Sarah's file, his eyes scanning the pages quickly. The more he read, the more serious his expression became. He picked up his phone and made a call. "Get me everything you have on a man named Elias Thorne, connected to an organization called the Enlightened Heart Society, and cross-reference that with any child disappearances in the Westchester area in the last 5 years connected to its members." While he waited, he turned to me. "Ma'am, you said your daughter-in-law is Amber? Amber, William's wife?" I nodded, surprised. "How did you know?" "Your family is fairly well known in Scarsdale," he replied. "William is a prominent architect. This makes things even more complicated." A moment later, his phone rang. He listened, saying an occasional, "uh-huh," his eyes never leaving the file. When he hung up, he looked at us, and this time there wasn't a trace of doubt left in his eyes. "All right," he said, "you were right. There's an alarming correlation. At least 3 children from wealthy families within the society have mysteriously moved abroad in the last few years. No official exit records. The parents all claim they're studying overseas, but no one's been able to contact them. And this symbol has turned up in the personal effects of 2 of those 3 families." He paused, rubbing his temples. "We've suspected Elias for a long time, but the man is airtight. We can't touch him. He's protected by a team of top-tier lawyers and a wall of silence from his followers. We can't just storm his compound without a solid search warrant, and to get that, we need proof of an imminent crime." He looked at us, a sense of helplessness in his eyes. "We need a person on the inside, someone who can give us the time, place, and method of this great purification. Someone who can confirm that an exchange of children is about to happen." The air in the room grew heavy. I understood what he meant. They were at a dead end. They had the pieces, but they couldn't put the puzzle together without more information from the inside. And who could possibly get inside? Amber was brainwashed. The other followers were too loyal. And then an idea sparked in my mind. A crazy idea, a reckless one, but maybe, just maybe, the only one we had. I looked at Sarah, then at Detective Miller. I thought of Noah and Ava. I thought of the other children who might be the next sacrifices. The fear was still there,
a cold beast coiled in my stomach, but rising above it, the fire of my hatred and my love for my grandchildren burned even brighter. I took a deep breath, and my voice, when it came out, filled the silent room with a clarity and resolve that surprised even me. I'll do it. Detective Miller and Sarah both turned to stare at me, stunned. I'll be that person, I repeated, looking the detective straight in the eye. I'm Amber's mother-in-law. I have a reason to approach the society. Tell me what I need to do. I'll go in there. I'll be your inside woman. My decision hung in the heavy air of the conference room. Detective Miller studied me, his eyes a mixture of disbelief and a flicker of admiration. Mrs. Patricia, he said slowly, do you understand what you're offering? This is incredibly dangerous. Elias is no fool. He and his inner circle are experts at spotting deception. If you're found out, we can't guarantee your safety. I understand better than anyone, I replied, my voice steady. My 2 grandchildren's lives are on the line. What does my safety matter compared to theirs? Besides, I'm not a stranger. I'm the mother-in-law of one of his most devout followers. It's the most perfect cover you could ask for. Sarah placed a hand on my shoulder, a small supportive squeeze. She's right, James. Patricia is the only one who can do this. She's smart, she's patient, and she has an undeniable reason to get close to them. Miller thought for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but we have to do this very, very carefully. And so, for the next 2 days, that police safe house on the outskirts of Albany became a miniature command center. I, a retired history teacher, was given a crash course in becoming a reluctant spy. They taught me how to use a tiny camera hidden in a brooch and a fountain pen that could record audio. They built me a complete false identity. Patricia Miller, a wealthy widow recently moved from Connecticut after the sudden death of her husband, searching for comfort and a new purpose in life. They opened a bank account with an enormous balance under that name. The first and most crucial step was to make a donation large enough to get Elias's personal attention. $100,000, Miller suggested. It's enough to show you're serious, but not so much that it raises suspicion. No, I cut in. 100,000 is the number a curious person gives. I want to show desperation and devotion. $500,000. Miller and his colleagues stared at me, astonished. I knew it was a crazy number, but I also understood the psychology of men like Elias. They're drawn to grand, impulsive gestures. They'll think I'm a grieving widow, not in my right mind when it comes to money, I explained. That's exactly the prey Elias is looking for. And I was right. I called Amber, my voice trembling with practiced grief. I lied and told her that I'd been thinking so much about what she'd said that after Richard's death I felt empty and lost. I told her I wanted to learn about the Enlightened Heart Society, that since she joined, she seemed so much happier and had found herself, and I wanted that too. I wanted to find the peace she'd found. At first, Amber seemed surprised, but when I mentioned my desire to contribute to the society to show my sincerity, her voice became eager. 2 days later, I, in the role of the wealthy widow, was personally escorted by Amber to Elias's compound. The place looked more like a luxury resort than a religious center. Perfectly manicured lawns, serene meditation gardens, and a main building of modern glass and wood. Inside, the air was filled with soft, melodic music and the gentle scent of herbs. Followers dressed in white moved about quietly, serene smiles on their faces. But behind those smiles, I could feel a strange emptiness, as if they had surrendered their own will. I was brought to meet Elias in his private office, a large room with a glass wall overlooking an artificial lake. He rose to greet me with a brilliant smile and a warm handshake. He looked less like a cult leader and more like a successful CEO. He listened to my fabricated story with deep empathy, his eyes never leaving my face. He spoke of loss, of pain, and of the path to enlightenment. He was a masterful actor. "Mrs. Miller," he said, his voice as smooth as honey, "your loss is immense. But sometimes it is from the ashes of our pain that we are reborn stronger. The Enlightened Heart Society is not a religion. We are a family, and we always welcome souls who are finding their way home. I handed him the check for $500,000. I saw a nearly imperceptible flash of greed in his eyes before it was masked by a look of profound gratitude. "Your generosity is astounding," he said. "This proves your spirit is ready for a great journey." I had passed the first test. Over the next few days, I attended meditation sessions and lectures, listening to the empty rhetoric about cosmic energy and purification. My brooch and my pen recorded it all. I recorded hushed conversations about special arrangements, about new souls soon to be welcomed into worthy families. And most importantly, I overheard the date and time of the Great Purification, next Friday night. While I was playing the part of a devoted follower, Noah and Ava were perfectly safe. They had been taken to a house in the countryside, a remote place owned by a distant relative of Sarah's, and, of course, under the 24/7 watch of 2 undercover agents posing as a farm couple. To the kids, it was a surprise summer vacation. They were playing outside, feeding chickens, and milking cows. Every day I received short videos the agent sent me. Seeing their smiles was the only medicine that kept me going in this charade. But the children's absence couldn't go unnoticed by Amber for long. It happened one afternoon after a group meditation. My phone buzzed. It was Amber. I took a deep breath before answering, trying to keep my voice calm, as if I were truly enjoying a countryside getaway. "Hello, Amber dear. Is everything all right?" "Mom!" Her voice on the other end was clipped and a little annoyed, though she was trying to restrain it. "Are you and the kids okay? You said you would call me every day, and I haven't heard from you. I've tried calling you several times." I had intentionally kept the phone on silent, just as the police instructed. "Oh, I'm so sorry, sweetie," I replied, managing a light laugh. "The reception out here is just terrible. Your cousin's place is really out in the sticks. We're fine, just wonderful. The kids are absolutely in love with the lambs. They spend all day running around in the fields." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint tap-tap-tap of her fingernails on a hard surface, a habit she had when she was impatient. "Is that so?" she said, her tone unconvinced. "Well, when are you planning on bringing them home? I think they've had enough of a vacation. This Friday is the weekend. I'd like to have a family dinner." Her words sounded reasonable, the normal request of a mother wanting her children back. But I knew weekend dinner was just a cover. Friday was the day of the Great Purification. She was testing me, making sure her merchandise would be delivered on time. "Oh, of course, dear," I replied cheerfully, "but they're having such a wonderful time, I'd hate to cut it short. How about we let them stay for the rest of the week? I'll bring them back on Monday, just in time for school." I deliberately offered a different timeline, just to see how she'd react. "No!" Her voice was suddenly sharp, all patience gone. I said Friday. I have a big surprise planned for Friday night. The children have to be home. Do you understand? The emphasis on the word have sent a chill down my spine. She was no longer hiding the urgency in her voice. The act of the concerned mother was over, replaced by someone giving an order, someone afraid their deal was about to fall through. All right, dear," I said quickly, soothingly. "If it's that important to you, I'll bring them home Friday afternoon. Don't you worry." "Good," she snapped back. "Remember that, Mom. Friday afternoon." She hung up without another word. I slowly lowered the phone, my hand trembling. That conversation, though the word merchandise was never spoken, the tension and the dark intent behind it were clearer than ever. The trap was closing, and the animal inside was growing impatient. We were running out of time. My lies only held for a couple of days. The closer it got to the Great Purification, the more agitated and anxious Amber became. She called constantly, asking about the children, her voice growing thinner and tighter with impatience. I had to rely on the police tech team. They photoshopped recent pictures of Noah and Ava into a farm setting, which I then forwarded to Amber. But even that, it seemed, wasn't enough. On Wednesday afternoon, with only 2 days left until the ceremony, my greatest fear came true. I was sitting in a coffee shop near the compound, waiting for my scheduled personal counseling session with Elias, when I got an urgent call from Miller. Patricia, she's on her way. Amber is driving toward the safe house. She found the address somehow, probably tracked your phone. We've got a team moving to intercept her, but you have to get there now. You're the only one who can handle her. My heart fell through the floor. They rushed me into an unmarked car, and we tore down the highway at a dizzying speed. We reached the safe house just minutes before Amber. The agents had already whisked the children and the farmer couple into a hidden panic room in the basement. I stood on the front porch, my heart hammering against my ribs, waiting for the confrontation.
Amber's white SUV screeched to a halt in the driveway. She burst out of the car, her face a pale mask of fury and terror. She was no longer the serene, ethereal follower. She looked like a cornered animal. "Mom!" she screamed, storming toward me. "Where are they? I know you're hiding them in there. What are you doing? Are you trying to ruin everything?" "Amber, calm down, honey," I said, holding up my hands, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "I don't know what you're talking about. The children are out on a walk in the woods with David." "Lies!" she shrieked, her eyes wild. "Do you think I'm a fool? I knew you were up to something the minute you asked to join the society. You're trying to take them from me, aren't you? You don't understand. This is the only way. It's a necessary sacrifice for enlightenment." She was screaming nonsense about sacrifice and purity, but all I heard was selfishness and cruelty. It took every ounce of my self-control not to slap her across the face. I had to keep the act going. I took a step back, feigning hurt. "Amber, how can you say that to me? I only want what's best for you and the children. I saw that you'd found peace in the society. I just wanted to support you." "Support me?" She let out a crazed laugh. "By hiding my offering? Do you have any idea what you've done? Without them, I'll lose everything. Elias will never forgive me." Our argument grew more intense. She pleaded, then she threatened. She wept, then she screamed. I stood my ground, trying to balance the role of a wounded mother-in-law with the seething rage that was threatening to boil over. I knew that one wrong word, one slip, and the entire plan would be for nothing. Finally, when she saw that she couldn't break me with anger, she changed her tactics. She collapsed at my feet, grabbing my legs, sobbing hysterically. "Mom, I'm begging you. Please, this is my only chance. Just this once. After the ceremony, everything will be okay. We'll have a new life, a peaceful life. Please, I'm begging you, give them back to me." Seeing her kneeling at my feet, I felt a wave of revulsion, but I knew this was the moment. I had to give in, but on my own terms. I bent down and helped her up, pretending to be convinced. All right, dear," I said, my voice full of weariness and resignation. I can't stand to see you in such pain. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I just don't understand your faith." I looked her directly in the eyes, my gaze full of feigned sincerity. "I promise you, this Friday, on the day of the ceremony, I will bring them home. They're still out on their walk. They're not back yet, but I promise, Friday evening, they will be there. I understand how important this is to you. I won't ruin it." Amber looked up, her tear-filled eyes searching my face for any sign of deception. But all she saw was an old, tired mother-in-law who had finally surrendered. At last, she nodded. "Really, Mom?" "I promise. I'm one of the society now, too. Don't you trust me?" I said, my voice firm. She stood up, wiped her tears, and relief washed over her face. She gave me a quick, detached hug, then got in her car and drove away. I stood there, watching her car until it disappeared down the tree-lined road. Only then did I let myself tremble. My legs went weak, and I had to grab a porch column to keep from collapsing. The play was reaching its final act. The curtain was about to fall.
and I knew it would be a scene of blood and tears. Friday arrived like a bad dream. The sky over Scarsdale was a heavy leaden gray, mirroring my mood. The air was thick and still, promising a storm. I could barely eat all day, surviving on sips of ginger tea to soothe my knotted stomach. I spoke to Noah and Ava on a video call. Seeing their bright, innocent faces, hearing them chatter about the lambs was both a comfort and a dagger to my heart. They had no idea their own grandmother was about to lead them back into the lion's den. Late that afternoon, a police car brought me and the 2 children back to William and Amber's house. The house felt alien, cold and silent, nothing like a home. The cloying smell of incense hit me the moment the door opened. Amber was waiting in the living room. She wore a long, white dress, her hair neatly braided. She looked ethereal and serene, but her eyes had a strange, feverish brightness to them. She didn't hug or kiss the children like a normal mother. She just looked at them, a cool, appraising gaze, as if she were inspecting precious goods before a transaction. "Hello, children," she said, her voice flat, devoid of all emotion. "Go wash your hands. We're going to have a very special evening." Noah and Ava, probably sensing the tension in the air, just mumbled a quiet hello and did as they were told. I stood there, watching my daughter-in-law, searching for something familiar, a flicker of maternal love in her eyes. But there was nothing. The woman standing before me wasn't the Amber I knew. She was a follower of Elias, a soulless instrument in his hands. "Thank you, Mom," Amber said to me, but her voice held no gratitude. "For keeping your word." "I made a promise," I replied, my own voice dry. I saw her go into the kitchen. I followed quietly, watching from the doorway. She took a glass pitcher of a pale pink liquid from the refrigerator. She poured the liquid into 2 small cups decorated with cartoon characters. Then, she opened a small vial and added a few drops of a clear liquid to each cup, stirring it in. "What is that, Amber?" I asked, stepping into the room, keeping my voice casual. She jumped, startled, but quickly regained her composure. "It's just an herbal calming tonic, Mom. Elias says it will help the children relax so they can be fully open to receiving the grace of the ceremony. Don't worry, it's completely natural." Completely natural. The lie was so blatant it made me want to scream. I knew it was a sedative, something to turn my active, lively grandchildren into docile, easily handled dolls. I wanted to lunge forward and knock the cups out of her hand, but I couldn't. The recording pin in my pocket was active. This was the final, damning piece of evidence. She took the cups into the living room and handed them to Noah and Ava. "Drink up, my loves," she said, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Mommy's special juice will give you beautiful dreams." Noah hesitated, but Ava, who always trusted her mother, took the cup and drank it down. Seeing his sister drink, Noah followed suit. My heart shattered into a million pieces. I had to stand there, helpless, and watch my grandchildren drink that poison. I bit down hard on my lower lip, tasting the salt of my own blood. This was my sacrifice, the pain I had to endure to bring this all to an end. It wasn't long before the drug took effect. Noah and Ava's eyes grew heavy, their movements slow and sluggish. They sat silently on the sofa, their gazes unfocused, the usual chatter and laughter gone. Amber looked at them with a satisfied expression. She turned to me. "It's time, Mom. Let's go." At night, Elias's compound was haunting. Hundreds of candles lined the walkways, casting long, dancing shadows on the glass walls. Inside, the main hall had been transformed into a makeshift cathedral. Hundreds of followers in white sat silently on floor cushions, all facing a stage decorated with white flowers and strange symbols. The atmosphere was both solemn and suffocating. Amber led the children, now completely dazed, inside. All eyes turned to them, not with love, but with a sick mixture of curiosity and reverence.
I followed behind, feeling like I was walking into some modern-day circle of hell. My brooch was transmitting a live feed back to the police command center. Miller's voice came through my tiny earpiece. "We see everything, Patricia. All units are in position. Stick to the plan. We're moving in the second the exchange begins." As a major donor, I was given a seat of honor near the front. From here, I had a clear view of everything. I saw the wealthy couples, the ones Sarah had called the new families, sitting in a separate section. They looked anxious, their eyes constantly darting toward the children being brought in. I recognized a few faces, prominent figures in New York business and society. The nausea rose in my throat again. Evil really does hide in the most luxurious places. Elias walked onto the stage to the sound of soft, meditative music. He too was dressed in white, but his robes were more ornate, embroidered with gold thread. He raised his hands and the entire room fell into an immediate, absolute silence. "Enlightened souls," he began, his deep, warm voice echoing through a hidden sound system. "Tonight is a sacred night. Tonight we witness the ultimate sacrifice, an act of the purest love. Tonight, young spirits will be freed from the karma of their old world to begin a new life under the protection of those who are worthy. This is not a parting. This is a rebirth. This is the great purification." The followers murmured in unison, something that sounded like "Praise be the light." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I had to stay calm. It was almost over. After a long sermon from Elias about sacrifice and rebirth, the main part of the ceremony began. He gave a signal, and Amber, along with 2 other women, led their children onto the stage. The 3 children, my Noah and my Ava among them, stood there like marionettes, their eyes vacant. They looked so small and fragile under the stage lights. Elias approached each child, placing a hand on their head and reciting prayers in a strange language. Then he turned to face the childless couples. "The time has come," he declared, "for the new guardians to receive their sacred gifts." A well-dressed, elegant couple stood up and walked toward the stage. I recognized them from the society pages. They were a power couple in the world of finance. The woman smiled, a look of pure satisfaction on her face, and held out her hand toward Noah. My heart stopped. This was it. This was the moment. My hand went to the brooch on my coat, ready to press the emergency signal. Elias nodded at Amber. "Amber, you have shown unparalleled faith. Are you ready to complete your offering?" Amber, with the ecstatic expression of a martyr, knelt down. "Master, I am ready." She took Noah's hand, preparing to lead him to the waiting couple. In that single moment, something no one expected happened. Maybe the effects of the drug were beginning to wear off, or maybe it was just a flicker of pure survival instinct. But Noah suddenly gave a little shake of his head. He looked around, his drowsy eyes searching for something familiar in the sea of strange faces. And then his eyes locked on mine. "Grandma," a faint whisper escaped his lips. "Grandma." That one word shattered every last bit of my restraint. I wasn't a spy anymore, not an informant. I was just a grandmother. I shot to my feet, unable to bear it for another second. I closed my eyes, a single tear rolling down my cheek, and I pressed the brooch hard. At the same instant, I screamed, a cry that held all of my pain, my rage, and my love. "Stop!" The entire room turned to stare at me in stunned silence. Elias, Amber, everyone. The smile on Elias's face froze. And that's when all hell broke loose. My scream tore through the phony reverence of the ceremony.
For one heart-stopping moment, the entire hall was plunged into shocked silence. Every eye, from the devout followers to the wealthy couples, was fixed on me, a small, old woman trembling in the front row. Elias stared, his beatific smile gone, replaced by a frown of confusion and annoyance. Amber turned, her eyes wide with bewilderment, as if she couldn't comprehend why her own mother-in-law would ruin her most sacred moment. But the silence lasted only for a split second. Immediately following my scream, the massive plate glass windows of the main hall exploded inward. Black-clad figures in full tactical gear rappelled down from the ceiling and stormed in from all sides. At the same time, every door was kicked open. State police special forces with riot shields and rifles leveled poured in like a flood. "Police, nobody move, hands on your head." A voice boomed over a loudspeaker, drowning out the meditation music and plunging the room into absolute chaos. The followers, who moments before had been lost in a state of rapture, were now screaming in panic. They shoved and pushed, trying to find an escape, but every exit was blocked. The red laser dots from the officers' rifles danced across the white robes, creating a scene that was both chaotic and surreal. On stage, Elias was the first to react. His saintly mask vanished, revealing the true face of a cunning old fox. He grabbed the child nearest to him, not Noah or Ava, but another woman's child, and tried to use him as a human shield. But he was a step too slow. An officer dropped from the rafters and tackled him cleanly to the floor. The sharp, dry click of handcuffs echoed through the hall. Meanwhile, another team of officers, led by Detective Miller, charged straight for the stage, their sole focus on securing the children. I saw Miller scoop Noah up into his arms, while a female officer grabbed Ava, holding her tight. They moved them quickly out of the chaos. As Miller passed me, he gave me a single, sharp nod that said it all. "It's over, Patricia. You did it." I looked toward Amber. She was still standing there, frozen in the middle of the mayhem, as if her mind couldn't process what was happening. The brainwashing, the fortress built by Elias's lies, was crumbling before the brutal reality. She watched Elias being hauled away, watched her children being carried off by police, and then, finally, she looked at me. Her eyes no longer held fanaticism. They held a horrifying mix of guilt, confusion, and the soul-crushing pain of realizing what she had done. She didn't scream or resist when a policewoman approached and cuffed her hands. She just sank silently to her knees on the floor, hands cuffed behind her back, and began to weep. Not the manipulative tears of before, but the raw, choked, heartbroken sobs of a completely broken soul. I stood there, amidst the shouting and the pounding footsteps, and watched my daughter-in-law being led away. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel the satisfaction of revenge. I just felt a deep, boundless sorrow. Sorrow for my grandchildren, for my son, and even for Amber, for her lost and broken spirit. The raid on the Enlightened Heart Society became a national sensation. The true face of Elias and his sophisticated human trafficking ring was exposed. Dozens were arrested, from the ringleaders like Elias to accomplices like Amber to the wealthy couples who had come to buy children. The lavish compound was sealed off, becoming a massive crime scene. Sarah and I spent days working with the police and the prosecutors. My recordings and the video from my brooch were the core pieces of irrefutable evidence. I had to tell my story over and over, each retelling forcing me to relive the nightmare. William flew back that very night. When I saw him at the police station, he looked like he had aged 10 years. His eyes were red raw, his face gaunt with shock and grief. He didn't say a word. He just pulled me into a tight, trembling hug. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he whispered into my shoulder, his voice breaking. "It's all my fault. I was so wrapped up in my own world. I didn't listen to you. I let her go." I rubbed his broad back, just as I had when he was a little boy. It's not your fault, William. Evil wears many masks, and sometimes it looks like love and faith. You can't blame yourself. But I knew this wound would be with him for the rest of his life. The guilt of not seeing how far his wife had fallen, of prioritizing his work over his family, would be a heavy burden for him to carry. Reuniting with Noah and Ava was the only ray of light in those dark days. They were examined by child psychologists. Thankfully, because of their young age and the effects of the sedative, their memory of that special night was foggy and indistinct. They just remembered a lot of noise and lights, and then Grandma and Daddy were there to get them. We decided we wouldn't tell them the truth about their mother. Not yet. Maybe never. We just said that their mommy was very sick and had to go away to a special hospital for a very, very long time. It was a kind lie, a fragile shield to protect what was left of their childhood. The trial took place several months later. I had to testify. Standing on the witness stand, seeing Amber in the defendant's box, dressed in an orange prison jumpsuit, looking thin and hollow, my heart ached. She never once looked at me during the entire trial. She just stared at the floor. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was a victim, manipulated and brainwashed by Elias. But the recordings, especially the one where she discussed her children as merchandise, and our argument at the safe house, sealed her fate. In the end, justice was served. Elias and his inner circle received life sentences. The couples who bought the children also received heavy sentences and public condemnation. Amber, as an accomplice, was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with the possibility of parole for her cooperation after her arrest. When the judge read the sentence, I felt nothing, just an emptiness. It was all over, but there were no winners. We had all lost. 1 year later, our lives have slowly settled into a new normal. William decided to leave his job at the big architectural firm. He sold the house in Scarsdale, the one that held too many painful memories, and bought a smaller place near us in Albany. He started his own practice, working from a home studio, so he could spend all his time with the children. He became a real father, the kind of father he should have been all along. The court granted William and me joint custody of Noah and Ava. Our house is now always filled with the sound of laughter and the pounding of little feet. They have gone back to being happy, lively kids. The wounds in their souls, if there are any, have been wrapped in the love of their father and their grandmother. Sometimes Noah asks about his mom. "Is Mommy's sickness ever going to get better?" he asked once while we were gardening together. I stopped what I was doing and looked into his clear, innocent eyes, a question too heavy to answer. "Yes, sweetie, Mommy's sickness is very complicated, but she loves you and Ava very much. You always remember that." I don't know if it's the right answer, but it's the only one I have to give. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, the three of us are in the backyard. William is teaching Noah how to throw a baseball. Ava is sitting on my lap on the swing under the old oak tree, listening intently as I read her a fairy tale about a brave princess. A gentle breeze blows, carrying the scent of roses and freshly cut grass. The sound of the children's laughter mingles with the chirping of birds. Looking at this scene, a feeling of warm, quiet peace, a feeling I thought I would never have again, slowly fills my chest. The storm has passed. My family, though broken and scarred, is still here. We still have each other. I close the book and hug Ava close. She looks up at me, her eyes big and clear. "Grandma," she says, "you're the best grandma in the whole world." I smile, a real smile from the bottom of my heart, and kiss the top of her silky hair. Tears well up in my eyes again, but this time they are not tears of pain or fear. They are tears of gratitude. My story ends here, in this garden under the golden afternoon sun. I have walked through hell and come back. I have faced the cruelest betrayal and made the hardest choices. But when I look at my 2 grandchildren, I know it was all worth it. A mother's love can be clouded by darkness. It can be led astray by fanaticism. But a grandmother's love, my friends, that is a primal instinct, an unshakable force. It will fight, it will sacrifice, and it will do the craziest things imaginable to protect its own. And it will fight until its very last breath to bring the light back home.